Hey, it's Tenaya, running for Congress. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes me qualified to be your congressperson. I've always been politically inclined. I remember in elementary school I dressed up as the first woman president for Career Day. The moment of activism, where activism really fueled me, was an anti-apartheid rally when I was in junior high school. That feeling, that power of the people to make change in the world, that really stuck with me. I had an amazing mentor and teacher in high school who was my government teacher and mock trial coach, who's my mentor for this campaign as well. And he introduced us to several elected officials, including Javier Becerra. So running for this seat feels a little full circle. In college, I went to Tulane University and I focused on political science. And I subsected that focus on environmental studies. The environment has always been my first love, my first passion, my first cause. Right after school, I went to work for the PIRGs, the Public Interest Research Group, and the PIRGs recruited me to Los Angeles specifically to work on their largest campaign, the largest campaign, statewide campaign they'd ever run. It was a proposition campaign, Prop 212, and it was for campaign finance reform. And that's really, I learned a valuable lesson because I came to be an environmental activist. And I realized that without campaign finance reform, without talking about campaign finance reform and implementing campaign finance reform, we can't be successful on any of the social issues that we care passionately about. And that continues today. It's exciting to see how much the conversation has come around and the realization that where money influences politics, that's a big reason why we're not promoting a green economy, is because the fossil fuel industry is spending so much money electing people, essentially. After the PIRGs, I went to graduate school at UCLA. I was at the Luskin School of Public Policy or Public Affairs, the Luskin School of Public Affairs, and did my master's in public policy. And while I was there, Michael Dukakis, who was one of my professors, he really taught us how to get policy implemented by working with coalitions. And so a large part of my strategy to get elected here is about targeting and mobilizing certain coalitions, and I'll talk about that in another video. But Michael Dukakis actually knows me as the hemp girl, because while I was in graduate school, I was working my way through graduate school, I worked for the California Organic Cotton and Hemp clothing store and became really fascinated with the concept and the idea of voting with your dollars and really making business an engine and a driver of this green economy that we're working towards. And hemp, being a very sustainable cash crop, became a big interest for me. I did a 56-page feasibility study on growing industrial hemp in the United States, and hemp growth remains a really important and interesting policy piece for me, which we can talk about later. After graduate school, I became a Sustainable Communities Leadership Fellow. It was a fellowship program by the Irvine and Hewlett Foundations, and I worked for an incredible man, David Abel, who is sort of the planning and sustainable planning guru in Los Angeles. And I worked in his downtown office, and after that I was hired by the campaign, moved up to Sacramento. And really what we were doing, there was a Blue Ribbon Commission that was done by Bob Hertzberg when he was up there. And it said that in order to have sustainable development in California, we needed to overturn Proposition 13, which is kind of like the third rail of politics. But the Irvine and Hewlett Foundation took that seriously, and they said, what can we do to start to build and engage constituents in having this conversation? So again, it's kind of like the campaign finance reform, right? If we don't have the right economic incentives and the right economic triggers, we're not going to be able to build green cities and build a green economy because the incentives are all wrong. So it was another initiative, another campaign to engage people in the conversation around redesigning the economic incentives to have a more sustainable development approach at the local level. So that was a really interesting campaign. And what we did a lot of work with the legislators up in Sacramento. After that, I came back down to Los Angeles, and I worked for the city of Santa Monica. Their issue was that they had these amazing sustainability indicators, and the city was working very hard on it, and they were able to get city agencies engaged, and they were able to get residents engaged, but businesses were not engaged in helping achieve the sustainability goals that the city had set out. So they needed a business greening program. So they hired myself and this amazing woman, Goli Gabe, and she and I were the dynamic duo, and we put together this program, a business screening program that's still up and running under the name of Sustainable Works, which you can Google. The woman who was my intern at Sustainable Works is now the director of the program, so that's fantastic. It's still up and running just like we designed it. I left the environmental world after that because I needed a job that had really good healthcare benefits. My husband was going freelance. He's a post-production editor. We were getting married. And so I needed good healthcare benefits. So I abandoned the environmental movement and went to organ and tissue donation. And I was there for 10 years, and it was the best decision I ever made because it taught me the lesson that if you want to engage, you need to inspire. So the environmental movement, the message was oftentimes those bad guys, businesses were bad and people were bad and, plastic trash bags were bad. Everything was bad and the sky was falling. And it was a hard message. It was not necessarily inspiring. It was kind of doomsday. And what I learned with organ and tissue donation was the power of telling individual stories to inspire. Because when people are inspired, they engage. And that was amazing. I got to build all kinds of engagement programs with One Legacy and Donate Life. I designed their volunteer program first. I did a Rose dedication program to engage more people in the Donate Life Rose Parade Float, which was really the Donate Life community's largest public relations campaign. So it was a way to engage more people in that campaign. And then the final thing I did was my favorite program. It was called Donate Life Hollywood. There was research. Again, it all comes back to research, right? So the problem was that Hollywood, the entertainment industry, was doing all these storylines about organ and tissue donation where the bad guy was stealing organs. It was also weird and negative and inaccurate. And the researcher found that these inaccurate storylines were stopping people from signing up to be organ and tissue donors. So I said, oh my God, I need to do something about this. And so they said, go do something about it. So I created Donate Life Hollywood as an engagement of the entertainment industry in the organ donation community. I always talked about myself as a liaison between the two, but engaging the entertainment industry in fulfilling this goal of getting more people registered as organ donors rather than scaring them out of checking yes at the DMV. And it worked. We increased engagement rates by 6% in 1 year. Nobody had ever done this with any other campaign. And so it was fantastic. I got to work with this one program in particular, Three Rivers, which made a huge impact that year. And it was a wonderful campaign, and we were able to really almost eliminate the negative storylines on television about organ and tissue donation. So that was a unique engagement campaign. After that, I was the director of communications, the global director of communications for Starlight Children's Foundation. And there were several projects there to engage. We worked with hospitals. So it was engaging people to help get hospitals the toys that they needed in order to help kids. Because what happens is when you're in the hospital, there's pain, there's boredom, and the more that you can give kids the opportunity to play, that engages them in a way that then they don't need as much pain medication. They recover at higher rates. So being able to fund the toys and activities that kids need in the hospitals was a way to both engage, we engaged donors and also worked very closely with the hospital community. Then I worked for Raytheon, which is a military industrial complex, right? And the goal there was executive communication, but there was also employee engagement that went on. And so finding opportunities for employees to engage in the mission of Raytheon, which wasn't just to create the Patriot missile, it was to create products that made sure the men and women serving our nation come home as veterans. And that's a really powerful mission. And when you can engage people in that mission and that feeling that they're making a difference, it is incredibly powerful. So I was able to take my nonprofit work of engaging in a mission that is inspiring and telling inspiring stories and use that in the world of employee engagement for a Fortune 500 company. My contract with Raytheon ended, and I wrote a book. That's what I did. I wrote a book called Find the Why, because this idea of employee engagement was so powerful to me. And the idea that in the nonprofit space, it's very obvious that you engage around the mission. You're driven by mission. And that in the for-profit space, kind of why you're doing what you're doing can get lost when you feel this disconnect to mission. So what Find the Why does, it's this 4-part process, and it helps you engage with what your personal sense of purpose is, but then also with the organizational mission. And in that way creates this employee engagement opportunity. And employee engagement, it leads to profit and all that kind of joy and happiness and all that kind of stuff. But what I found in my research was that people are engaged when they're connected to purpose. And then the election happened, and I was supposed to be marketing my book, and that really just didn't feel purposeful for me. I felt like I had to do something else. And so taking a page out of my playbook of Find the Why, my why has always been to engage people. And so at this point in time, I really feel like we need elected officials to not just be fighting for us and representing us, but engaging with us. And so that's what I do. I'm an engagement strategist. And so that is the type of campaign I'll be running. That is the kind of elected official I will be, is one who continues to reach back and engage constituents in all kinds of unique ways. So that's my background. That's way too long for you to probably digest, but I want to get it out there so that you know what it is, where I'm coming from, what I've done. A lot of this is on my website, Tenaya4Congress. Look under T, and you'll see a link to a lot of the different programs. Many of the programs that I've designed, the engagement programs I've designed, are still up and running today, which is great. That's the point. That's the power, is creating campaigns and opportunities that really work for people and continue to keep them inspired and engaged. So that's my intention with this campaign, and that's my intention as your congressperson. Thanks.